The purpose of this video is to demonstrate how easy it is to map the outline of a challenging case with CBCT. It's a PlanMecker software that we're using from Exis, and I'm going to be using the X7 from EdgeEndo. This is just mapping of the pulp chamber floor, and I'll work you through some of exactly what I do. First of all, you can see that this is a confluent canal in the mesial root of a lower molar. Lower first molar. We're just trying to get a feeling for where the confluence is and how dramatic it is. Just remember that probably 50% of all your broken files break at the confluence or at this very sharp intersection curve, mesial and lingual canals where they join. So the entrance to these canals can be quite abrupt coronally, and then once again in the mid-root, in this section here, 2 to 3 millimeters from your minor foramen, very abrupt as well. That's at the confluence. So you'll also notice some heavy calcifications in the pulp chamber. These are pulp stones, and we'll show you how to remove these. Just mapping from the buccal cusp down to the pulp chamber roof, and that's about 6 millimeters. Just lining up the CEJ from enamel to enamel on each side. Once again, you can see the heavy calcifications in the pulp chamber. So that's about 6 millimeters, and then from the pulp chamber floor to the furcation is about 3 millimeters, and a little bit over 1 millimeter from the roof of the pulp chamber down into the floor of the pulp chamber. Now in the top right, once again lining up the CEJ and taking the measurements to the buccal cusp. Down in the bottom left, we're just measuring from the exterior surface of the root at the CEJ level right around, and it's one of Rankin and Krasnow's rules of canal location, that wall is equidistant. Now once again we're mapping the pulp horns from the buccal cusp down to the pulp horns. These are both a little over 4.1 millimeters, and then the distance between them a little over 3 or 3.8 actually. So this gives us a really nice view in the live tooth view down bottom right. We can see literally prepping just distal to the buccal cusp. We're going to find our first pulp horn. These measurements you must know 6, 2, 1.5 and 3 because they're very, very standardized. Here they are here in this tooth, and it just prevents any gouging into the pulp chamber floor. The choice of armamentarium to actually cut these activities is really up to you. And I'm going to show you what I use shortly, but this is just mapping the exact working length, of which you can do very, very easily in this Exis software. So I'm just going to start mapping from 1 millimeter back and just following the root canal system along, which is going to give us a really good outline form up to the buccal cusp there, and there's our working length on the mesiolingual and mesiobuccal. And then the full tooth view, you can see the outline of the root canal system proper, which really is satisfying because you know what you're up against. And these curves are not insignificant. So that's a 4 millimeter mark there. This is a really nice burr to start cutting your access cavities from Comet. Actually, Comet have a wonderful range of access burrs. So there's our outline form in the bottom left, just removing that mesial amalgam too. Notice the distal, I should have taken a little bit of distal amalgam out of this prep, which I did not. Removing these amalgams have probably got caries or some cracks underneath them. Right, at the 4 millimeter mark we can start to see the pulp horns. Sure enough, just a little bit over 4. Now I'm going to take this down to 6, and I should start unroofing the pulp chamber and moving into removing those calcifications. So let's just see if that's what we see. Really sharp DG16 is wonderful for doing this kind of prep, and just scratching away just to confirm and make sure we're on the right path. I see a detached denticle down there that we're just going to unroot completely and remove. Some of these pulp stones we can easily just flick out with the DG16. Others are bound a little bit more tight, and we've got to use a little bit more aggression. Once again, using the comet burr, so there's an unattached pulp stone, just flicking that out, and underneath there we'll easily find the orifice of the mesial canals, mesiolingual, mesiobuccal. We can try and remove it with ultrasonics, but it's probably a bit slow. I'm just demonstrating that here. We're going to use an ultrasonic to remove these really heavy pulp stone calcifications. We do find it gets a little bit hot, so I'm just showing you this is a slow method of doing it. We can carry on and doing it this way, but make sure after 5 seconds you irrigate and cool down that pulp gem because it's going to get hot. Right, so there's the canal system of the mesial root underneath there, and that pulp stone is really tight. So for the remainder of it, we're just going to use the endotracer once again from Comet. All these are available from Henry Schein, and what I really like about these is the length of the shank and the thickness of the shank, because they don't bend and buckle like some of the munt spurs that have got a thin shank. Notice the safety tip on this endo guard, very similar to an endo Z. And what I'm doing here is just removing and refining the pulp chamber walls to a funnel form, so that whatever temporization you put in here, cavity or something else, it's not just going to collapse into the pulp chamber because you have a funnel form. Irrigating with a 30 gauge needle, always use a 30 gauge needle. And there we have our access prep. And just refining now into the canals using an endo tracer, because I know that that's a very slender opening. Once again, this is told to me from the CBCT. And I'm just opening up here so I can start to get a little bit of straighter line access, exploring the canal system, which is very tight on the buccal, and not so bad on the lingual. I'm just brushing a tiny little bit of pericervical dentine here away, not too much, just getting a little bit of access into that canal. The X7 is a wonderful file system, one of the most flexible on the market. Actually, it's only a 3-file system, and then you can add a glide path at your leisure if you require. I'm just working up to the confluence here on the buccal. So down we go, sliding down to the buccal, and because the confluence of buccal into the lingual isn't that pronounced at the curvature, we'll actually be able to take the X7s down to full working length on both the mesial and lingual. Always use a patency file just to make sure you're not blocking out with dentinal debris, and that's what we're doing here. A nice little tip is when you get a little bit further than mid-root, or actually get into working length, you can use an 06 size 15 into the mid-root portion of the canal. Here I should be working through sodium hypochlorite, but I just wanted to show you the debris that this file can pull up. Brushing towards the buccal. Buccal canal, brush towards the buccal, lingual, brushing towards the lingual. And that 06 just opens up to mid-root. Now the 04, size 20, first in our series. Look how flexible these files are. Literally, they just slide to working length and preserve that pericervical dentine just beautifully. Remember, always I should be working through a sea of hypochlorite. I just wanted to demo the really nice ability of the files. And look here how flexible this file system is. Amazing, especially on uppers when you're working into the buccal root system, how easy it is to pre-bend those files and just slide them straight into the buccal roots. And irrigate, irrigate, irrigate. Sodium hypochlorite 3%. Size 30 in the distal root, and size 30 in the mesial, mesiobuccal and mesiolingual. And these just slide right around that curvature in both the buccal and the lingual. And obviously this is sped up just to save time by about 4 times. So it's looking like I rushed it, and that's because I did. And then irrigate, irrigate, paper point, and finish. Notice in that previous picture you can see a soffit. This is current thinking that I don't have time to go over in this prep. Look at the very centered canal systems that you get with these X7. Watch the top right hand quadrant. So I'm just scrolling through. There's the distal root coming up, And here's the very challenging mesial root systems with the confluence about 2 millimeters back from the minor foramen. And that was coped with ease with these systems. And so that's to a size 30, which should be sufficient to allow significant irrigant through that system. And just coming back through the axial system, make sure you don't leave on your model big chunks of amalgam when you do a CPCT, otherwise you do get these flashes. You can see them in the lower section here. I apologize for not cleaning the model there. And then scrolling back up, just look at the centered nature of these preps. Really beautiful in these very curved canal systems. And the final cone fit. I could have taken the cones a little bit deeper, but these are prepped to size 30 in all canals. Remember, a size 30 irrigation needle is about size 32, so the irrigant is going to be getting very close to your apex with these. Hope you enjoyed that, and it's just a nice example of how using the Planmeca Remexis software with the X7 really gives you a nice case.
Interesting finding when I was negotiating the mesiolingual root. Here, let's just scroll through this root. I found at about 12 millimeters, marked there the working length, I found actually my 08 hand file started to create a ledge. And the ledge was just forming literally here, and I hadn't noticed this impediment or what appeared to be a pulp stone in the midroot area. So okay, once I realized that was what we were facing, I then literally came up to the axis, shaped up a little bit straighter, straight line axis without removing excessive pericervical denti in this area, and then pre-bent my hand file. So this is a lingual buccal. Pre-bent the hand file towards the buccal, so coming down the lingual but bending towards the buccal, slid past that little blockage there and managed to get down to working length quite easy. The confluence here of the the joining of the lingual and the buccal isn't too dynamic a curve, so we slid down there, got working length relatively easily. One other thing that somebody was asking me recently is it possible to get a three-dimensional view of your access chamber or your pulp chamber? Absolutely. This is how we do it. So I'm just going to remove the working length here so you can see the working length has gone. Right, coming to the axial view here, what we're going to first do is define the four corners of the pulp chamber from the pulp horns. Right, so to do this, come over to the implant view and start mapping. So we can literally scroll through the pulp chamber here, which we're going to do right up to the pulp horns. So these are the two mesial pulp horns. Distal pulp horns will be a little bit lower. Grab the root canal mapping tool and start mapping, scrolling down, and finding the two distal pulp horns and mapping these probably a little bit more accurately than I'm doing, and double clicking there. And if we have a look in the 3D tooth view, we can start to see exactly what I did. So that is the 3D view of the mapping of the pulp horns, mesial and distal. Let's do the pulp chamber floor. I'll just change the color of this one. I'll change it to red, and we'll do the pulp chamber floor in the default color. So come down to the pulp chamber floor. It's probably easier seen on this view up here. So let's just have a look. Make that a little bit larger and scroll down a little bit lower. Fine. Scroll to the pulp chamber floor level about here, and let's just map this out, something like this, and literally then we'll just join up the sides of the pulp chamber. And so we're just going to join the vertices and see what it looks like. So starting from the pulp chamber floor, let's just do that. Scrolling up. So you can see the path that we're taking is actually quite convoluted. And we'll finish that line there. Could have come a little bit higher, but never mind. And we'll start going down. So here, coming down. And then come back up, and we'll be finished. You get much quicker at doing this after you've done it a few times. That'll do, and going back down. Anyway, I'm sure you get the picture of what we're doing here. And there will be the 4 corners. Something like that. And so there is our pulp chamber all mapped out nicely. Not so nicely, but you get the picture. Here in the bottom right hand view, I'm just going to expand that to full screen and blow it up a little. Now what that allows us to do is to literally on the surface, or the buccal surface of the tooth, draw an outline. And we know exactly that that's going to be completely safe. And if you want to put measurements in there, you can just go ahead and put them. I have to put them in the other view, sorry. So if I want to put measurements here, I would just grab the ruler, put measurement there to there. And that was a little bit excessive, Steve. I'll just remove that one. Do it a little bit better than that. So coming up here and coming up here. Anyway, you get the picture. And there are the measurements that I've created to the pulp horns on the distal and the mesial. Hope that helps.